What's going on, everybody? I appreciate you checking in. All right, I'm going to keep this short because I had a great opportunity to jump on a podcast with a bunch of great guys. They're actually part of the Fantasy Roadshow. So if you guys haven't heard of them, go check out their YouTube channel, their social media handles. Go subscribe to them. A great group of guys, and I had a really good time kind of talking about the current state of the Raiders, draft expectations, what I think might happen, a little bit about a free agency, and I got to talk about myself, why I started this channel, and what motivates me to do this. And so, this is going to be a long video, so take some time. Listen to it, comment in the section down below as it goes through the segments. I'd love to hear from you. But two big announcements. One, when I hit 3,000 subscribers, I'm doing my next giveaway. So if you want to be included in that, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications. And once I hit 3,000, I'm going to hit you with that fourth giveaway that I've done since starting this channel. In addition to that, for this week's draft, if you are in the Vegas area, come join myself, two other content creators that do a great job covering the Raiders, Severe Raider, Pharaoh NFL. We're going to be at the Ahern Casino for day 1, day 2 of the draft. Doors open at 3. It's free admission, free parking. We got free giveaways. First 25 people to come through the door, you get 5 automatic entries into the giveaways. We're going to have 50-50 raffles. There's drinking food specials, the whole nine. So if you are in the Vegas area or plan on coming in for day 1, day 2 of the draft, go ahead in the description down below. I'm putting the Eventbrite link where you can RSVP because seating is limited. So jump on there and hit that link, RSVP if you can, but also comment in the comment section draft day. And so I'll know that you're going to try and show up. And if I see you comment draft day, I'll definitely try to find you and reach out to you. So again, guys, if you're in the Vegas area, hit us up. If you want to see the draft in person, we're going to be doing live coverage of the draft and just going through all the picks, the Raider picks, the whole nine. So I hope to see you guys there again. I appreciate it. I know this is going to be a long video, but again, going through a lot of Raider stuff with the guys on the Fantasy Roadshow. Go check them out. But enjoy this video. And again, comment as we go through it. Let me know your feedback, and I appreciate it. So without further ado, let's get into it.
This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
We are live. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Fantasy Roadshow. This episode is brought to you by Rule 1 Proteins. If you're looking to get back in the gym or just looking to re-up your supplement game, go check out Rule 1. They got the best protein powder, the best supplements, the best vitamins. You name it, they got it. Go check them out at www.rule1proteins.com. You guys know the drill. My name is Truck. We have the crew with us, as always. We have Coles and Shane O'Mac. And then today we are joined by a very special guest. You can find him on X at @the_805 Raider. Paul Kawamoto with Real Talk Raider Nation. Paul, how you doing, buddy?
I appreciate you guys. I'm doing extremely well. No better way to start the day than to talk some Raiders. And so I appreciate you guys inviting me on, and I'm excited.
I love it. So here's how my ADD brain works. When we were doing the intro, my brain was just thinking about how if we put Paul in between me and Shane, we would have like the AT&T, the like evolution of facial hair. Shane's got none. Paul's got the soul patch. I got the mustache. You got the beard.
Yeah.
Just get a mix of everything in it, right?
Yeah, perfect. I'll do one more plug for Rule 1. I was going to interrupt your intro, Truck, but I figured it would throw you off a little bit. So I just mixed this is water, and then it's a cold brew coffee protein. So sometimes in the morning like this, when I need a little caffeine, I'll just have a little protein shake, caffeine combined. So yeah, just wanted to plug that as well.
Nice.
Anyways, Paul, let's talk a little bit about Raiders, how you kind of grew your fandom there, and where'd that, passion first start, and just, give us a little background on yourself.
I guess I'll kind of put it in two ways. So the way it started for me was as just kind of a young kid. Actually, I have two parents that they grew up in the Bay Area. Shout out to my mom and dad. They are diehard 49er fans.
My entire extended family on their side, both my parents' side, they're diehard Niner fans, and I kind of grew up. And when I started playing football young, I wore the number 33 for Roger Craig. And it's funny. I don't think my parents know this story, and so if they do come on and watch, they'll know how I actually became a Raider fan. It's kind of fault to their players. Is early when I was young, you had two players. You had Roger Craig and Ronnie Lott that moved over to the Raiders. And when that happened, it kind of exposed me to the Raider Nation, Raider fan base. And as soon as I saw them, I saw the fan base, and I was like, wait a second, these guys are a little rowdy, and I just started paying attention. And over time, Tim Brown, he came in early 90s, and it just stuck. And so I started paying attention, and then a couple of my really good friends were Raider fans. And so, it kind of evolved that way. And so as just a young kid, kind of moved over. Now I got to feel the wrath of my parents and my in-law, or my in-laws, my extended family. I think it was not last season, but the season before that, the Niners played the Raiders, and so that was a good little fun rivalry inside the family. And so that's kind of how I became a Raider fan. Is I saw the fan base, and it just stuck as a young kid, and that's all she wrote.
So it's safe to say you're pretty rowdy then. That's what attracted you to them.
Let's do this. I've since I got 3 kids, and they're all girls, and they have softened me up like you wouldn't believe. So I coached football I played for 15 years, coached it for 23 years, and it's funny. As my coaching career went on, I had my first girl, and then they started seeing like, oh, Coach Paul's not as loud as he was last season, and then I have my second girl, like, wait, whoa, Coach Paul, he's softening up a little bit. And by the time I had my third one, it was just, I was the loud coach, I was the vocal coach, and they just kind of saw the softer side. And so I think all that has gone away for the most part. So, which is a good thing. I wouldn't change it for the world. So.
That's awesome. So you're from Bay Area. Where do you currently reside?
So actually, my parents are from the Bay Area. When I was born, they actually moved down to Southern California, and so I'm originally from Southern California. And I played there, started my coaching career there, started at the youth levels, and moved to the high school, and then in 2014, actually moved to the North Texas area with my wife and 2 of my kids at the time. Had my third one, so she's a Texas baby in Texas, and so. We're in North Texas, and I coached a little bit of football there, really just youth football, because I had my job. I've been with my job for, going on 16 years and love my job, but this is just something I do for fun and I'm passionate about. But that's how I knew how to get in the community, was coaching football. And so I went out there and I coached a little bit. And then in 2020, we wanted to be closer to family. And so we stumbled upon, actually my wife stumbled upon Henderson. I kind of somewhat, I don't want to say maneuvered that a little bit, but I knew the Raiders were in Vegas and she wanted to move closer to family. We both did, and that's how we ended up here. So in 2020, ended up coming into the Vegas area, and that's where we're at now. And I can't be more happier than to be next to the Raiders. So.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So I don't know the Vegas area too well. I know that, everyone thinks of Las Vegas and thinks of all the craziness, but I've heard there's some pretty great like hiking and golf, and it's a pretty amazing area out there around, I guess, on the outskirts, if you will.
There is, there's just on the northwest end, there's Mount Charleston that everybody goes to. It's about 45 minutes northwest, where you can get some snow in the winter, and that's kind of like the local getaway during the summer. When it's 110 degrees down here, it's 80, so everybody hits that up for the day. So that's kind of the local spot, but you're within a couple hour driving distance from so many different hiking destinations, whether you go down to Arizona, Utah. So it's a good spot. And I'll be honest, I'm in Henderson. I didn't, as a young kid, going into Vegas with the boys, doing some weekend trips and stuff. I just knew Vegas, the Vegas Strip. I had no clue Henderson even existed up until 4 years ago. So you got the Vegas Strip. It's obviously crazy. Vegas is Vegas, but you have the surrounding areas that are extremely nice, whether it be Henderson, Southern Highlands on the southwest end, or Summerlin, which is everybody is basically talking about Summerlin, trying to move there in the northwest end. So there's some really nice neighborhoods and some very family oriented spots, but you still got the Vegas Strip in your backyard. So
this is a question that kind of popped up for me as you were talking. So I understand Allegiant. I know where that is. I've seen that. It looks incredible. So I imagine you have, as you will forever have, a lot of the fan base that comes in is going to be tourists. And then is it just like, has Nevada really, explain, I guess, kind of how the fan base has welcomed the Raiders? Like, is it a lot of the suburban, if you will, the surrounding areas coming in and parking at Allegiant and tailgating? What is that like evolution of the Raiders fan base now encompassed with the new stadium?
So this will kind of roll into the story of how I started my YouTube channel. And so as for many years, me and my boys, we would go to at least one Raider home game in Oakland, right? When I moved to Texas, I'd still fly into Oakland. We'd go to a game. We always pick a game, put it on the schedule, bang, we're attending a home game. And that didn't stop. Obviously, when I came into Henderson, obviously they're closer. We're now right next to Allegiant Stadium, and I was excited. When I'd go to Oakland games, I always imagined what it'd be like to raise my kids in the city of Oakland, just so I could feel just what Raider fan base truly is, and understand just how intense they are and how passionate we are. And when my wife and I decided to move to the Vegas area, I was excited. I could finally bring my kids around it. I've raised them to be Raider fans. It's obviously hard with how the Raiders have performed over the years. But one of the things is that we go to home games and it's 80% opposing team fans. And it's just not that feel anymore. Even the tailgating, you still have some of the hardcore guys that come down from Oakland or the California area and they tailgate. So, and when we first moved here, I went to, we got all up in our Raider gear. We're going to go to a spot to go watch the Raider game. And I was excited. I wanted to be all around Raider fans. And it was when they played the Ravens in 2021. And we walked into the spot and it was 80% Ravens jerseys. It was just the most disappointing thing. It just crushed me. And so after a while, I ended up being just fed up with it. And I said, you know what? I need to find the Raider fans over here. I have to. I'm raising my girls here. They need to understand what Raider fan base is. And so I got, obviously with the Josh McDaniels hire, I was not happy about it at all. And so last week 2 of last season, I said, you know what? I want to just start something. I want to come on here and talk about it. And I stopped coaching football back in 2019 because I wanted to give my wife and my girls more of my time. I wanted my wife to be able to have her time, because ever since we met, our life evolved around my work, our girls, and my coaching. Like, that's what our life evolved around. And I said, it's about time I give my wife her time and just have more time for my girls. And I said, you know what? I'm getting that itch to coach. I'm getting that itch to get involved again, but I don't want to put that time commitment into it. And so I said, you know what? Let's try. And, all the credit to my wife. She was all for it. She said, you got to do it. You have to do it. You'll be good. You'll be successful. I know you can do it. You have a lot of knowledge about the game and you have a passion about the Raiders. Go for it. And so I did. And not knowing anything about social media, not knowing anything about YouTube, but I wanted to try to figure out how to grow this fan base here. The Raiders are one of the most traveled fan bases globally. And for me not to find them here, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But the Vegas area over the last 30, 40 years is such a melting pot of fans. You have all walks of life. You have all fan bases here that have developed here. It's going to take a long time to kind of get the youth involved, and hopefully they grow up to be Raider fans. And so it's tough. It's tough. Don't get me wrong. It's tough being here, but I'm still loving it.
I've never said this to anyone on our podcast before that we've had on, but like I'm a huge fan. Like that is an awesome story. I could see it on Truck's face too as you were talking. Like,
oh yeah,
Truck is getting fired up. Truck might be a Raiders fan now. He's a Bears guy, but it's knowing Ryan and on it, seeing his face, being like, wow.
There's something about the Raiders, the way that they portrayed themselves when I was growing up, and seeing that how angry those fans were when they span the camera by the fans and stuff. So it's incredible fan base. And you sound like you're now the coach of the fan base.
Yeah,
that's what you're doing.
Outstanding.
I'm trying to be.
Yeah. So is it okay? Is it okay if I call you coach for the rest of this episode?
You feel free to do what you want. Absolutely.
Coach.
Beautiful. Thank
I
you.
love that. Truck, can we get his full screen up real quick? I want to show. I want to show the full background because it is badass. This is one of the coolest backgrounds we've had on.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. This is like not even. I still have boxes that still have Raider gear in it, Raider stuff in it. This is just kind of what I put up real quickly when I wanted to start this channel. Yeah. My wife actually, it was funny. She looked at me, she goes, "Oh, you're finally breaking it out. You're finally breaking it out, And I said, "Yeah, you know what? I got to make my background as good as possible and kind of show what I got a little bit."
Bravo. It's a great setup.
It's an outstanding setup. I'm a huge fan, dude. That story's really cool. I'm cheering for you, and I'll be doing my best to get your name out there. I don't know a ton of Raiders fans, but as we grow our platform, I'm going to be pushing Coach.
I appreciate it.
That's super cool. I'm rooting for you there. And this is going to be the second time we've gotten back-to-back episodes a little deep. I have a question that I don't have kids. I don't have a family. I imagine growing up and seeing the passion grow in them. I know Shane O'Mac, I'll let him speak to it a little bit as well, but I imagine that's got to be such a cool thing, like sharing your passion with them and seeing them specifically just cling on to the sport and then in the fan base and ask questions and have something with dad to be, cheering about on Sundays.
It is, one of my biggest things was, and I'll give real quick credit to the Dallas Cowboys fans, right? I mean, when I was in when I lived in North Texas, I don't think I got more credit for being a Raider fan than I ever did until I moved to Texas, because I think the Cowboys fans just understood the passion and the dedication of being a Raider fan. If you live in California, you're a Raider fan, you're either hated or you're loved. Because you got Charger fans, you got 49er fans, but I got so much love in Texas for being a Raider fan that I definitely appreciate that. But, one of the things about having kids is, my middle one, she was the one that was just tied to the television growing up. One of the things that would calm her down when she was crying as a baby was watching football. And I would sit with her and we'd watch it, and you just kind of get that, bond a little bit. And I've had to, I'll be honest, I had to manipulate them a little bit to be Raider fans because, obviously we've struggled for many years. But one of the tactics is opening kickoff. I buy them their Raider shirts and I put them at their seats at our dinner table with donuts. And they know at the beginning of every year they got their Raider shirts and they get their donuts. And when the Raiders play, every time they score a touchdown, I got a bucket of candy. They get to pick a piece of candy every time they score a touchdown. So it just gets them excited. It gets them excited that they're playing. It gets them excited that, and I'm tying, good times to it because I don't really want them to look at the screen too much because then they'll notice that they're losing all the damn time. So that's
the Padraig Harrington. Have you heard him talk about? He was in an interview talking about how he didn't pressure his kids to get into golf. He just created an experience around the game. So children supposedly crave that time, that bonding with their dad. So he would just go out, practice a bucket of balls out on the range, and they would just, have clubs, but he wouldn't force them into playing. And over time, they'd want to be like dad. So they'd start hitting. And then afterwards, he was like, I wouldn't be out there too long. I'd always go to the clubhouse, get a soda, get some ice cream. And it was just one-on-one time with dad. And then through that's why they craved to go play golf, and it grew to a love of the game. So
yeah. So for me, one of the things is I pick a couple games out of the year, and we actually go to a spot here locally, and it's a cool restaurant, sports bar type of environment, and we go and we hang out, and right outside of it is a big shopping center, so it pleases my wife, and they can go and walk around a little bit, and then there's a little splash pad that's right outside that my girls can go and just hang out. At halftime they run out there, and football's during the summertime, and so it's 100 plus most of the time, so they can go out there. We have our food, then they go out and play, and they come back and we have some dessert. And so it's tying those memories to not just it's strictly we're watching a Raider game. No, we're going for the Raider game, but I also get to go play in the splash pad. I also get to go get dessert, and so it's tying those memories to it. And the only thing that's I think is going to come bite me is if the Raiders actually do become good. Because last season when they played the Chargers the second time around and broke the scoring record, putting up 63 points and like 8 touchdowns. Well, that was a Monday night game, or that was a Thursday night game, and it was a school night. And the next thing I know, I'm flooding my kids with candy because they get to pick, eight times, out of the candy bucket. So, when the Raiders become good, it might bite me, but I'll take it. I'll definitely take it.
Shane, give us can you piggyback kind of a little bit on the kids point that we were just talking about?
Yeah. So, Paul, like you, I kind of subtly grease the wheels, of fandom with my boys. My basement is wall-to-wall framed jerseys. Every counter of the basement is memorabilia. So that's all they've known, all they've seen. But, my youngest, who's 13, I had 2 proud moments here in the last 6 months. One was I had never seen him so despondent and so dejected as a kid as when they lost at home to the Packers in the wild card round.
Yeah.
And he just knew, he was going to be ridiculed at school the next day by all his buddies and stuff that are Chiefs fans and everything. But, and he has a TikTok channel. And so on his TikTok channel bio or Instagram, I guess it is, it's, all you Chiefs fans are just bandwagon fans hopping on to when they're winning. So that, and then, when he texted me, 2 weeks ago saying, Dad, why is Dak Prescott demanding $60 million a year? Those are my 2 proud dad moments that at least, he has started to come into the fold of not only fandom, but really buying in emotionally.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's great. All right. Well, let's talk fantasy football. What is your background in fantasy football? Shane's got a pretty cool story of just playing back in the 90s, mailing in waiver moves. How long have you been involved? How many leagues are you in? Give us a rundown of your fantasy history there.
I want to say at one point I was in 4 leagues at one time. This is a while ago, but I stopped that. It's so hard to develop a strategy when you're trying to you're in 4 leagues, and you end up trying to target the same guys when you're in 4 different leagues. And if you pick the right guys, if your guys are successful, you're having a great fantasy season. But then if those same guys tank, kind of screwed. But me and my boys, my best friends from back in, playing when I was young, football, high school buddies, we all played football together. We've had the same league for going on. Shoot, when I was coming on here and you guys were talking about fantasy, I was like, man, how long did we play? This might be year 18 that we've done it. It's basically the same. It's a 10-man league. It's the same 9 guys. One guy will switch out here and there depending on who's available, but it's the same 9 guys basically, and it's bragging rights. It's the loser. The loser we call it the board bitch. That's what we call it. But for the following season, you're manning the board. You're bringing the food. You're handing out the beers, the drinks. You got to draft your team, but also you got the responsibility of handling the whole thing. But it's bragging rights. We go pretty hard, and we've all coached together. We've played together, and so we all think we're experts in our own right. And so it comes with some pretty fruitful conversations, to say the least. So So, yeah,
are these your boys? Are these your Raiders boys? Are these the guys that come in and have been going to a game a year together? Or is that different?
Yeah, it's most of them. 3 of them are the boys that we, my good friends that we go and we go to Raider games every year, and the other ones are, they got Saints fans, got Bucks fans, got Niner fans, the whole nine. So, but it's good. It's definitely a competition, and we got the loser gets a poop trophy, literally has poop on the top of it, and you gotta, at any given time, if anybody in our text message thread requests a picture, you have to take a picture of it where it's mounted visible from the front door of your house. Like that's our rule.
That's fine.
And so that hasn't gone very well with girlfriends, fiancés, and wives, but
I love that. That is outstanding. And you guys just really stick to your roots there. Is that like a PPR league? What's your kind of like settings? What's the?
It's a franchise player. So you get one franchise player after the 7th round, and it's a half point PPR.
Franchise like forever if you draft them after that
just
round,
or just
okay. So like a keeper is what Truck and I call that keeper league. Nice.
I do like the franchise tag
as
opposed to the keeper league. I'm just
gonna steal that.
I might be stealing that.
Can we steal that? Do you mind if we take that term?
Take what you want. Absolutely. It's fun.
I like that. That's great.
Any player that's picked from the 8th round on. I think 8th round. You basically can choose at the beginning of next year's draft. You can choose which one you want to keep, and that's automatically your 8th round pick for that year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it's good. Oh yeah, we like that. We like it. It makes it fun.
That's awesome.
Shane, you know what I just realized? ADD brain again. You're every episode at least one time I age Shane. I bring up something.
Shane.
Anyways, awesome. Well, let's talk about the draft, right? There's Raiders. Like, I'm going to give you just a little rundown of my view of the Raiders currently. I think there's a culture being reestablished, which is really exciting as, Raider football. Pierce is the perfect kind of person to have in that head coaching spot to, that's what he was as a player. And that's what he's building there is that culture. And that's the strength of the team right now. You have Max Crosby, who's just a bad dude. So I think you're starting to feel that, and it's got to be exciting. As you're growing this fan base and really, exposing that, bringing that Raider fan base to Vegas, like this is the kind of thing you pitch, right? You're like, this is Raider football, so let's build on it. So that's kind of where you're at. You obviously need a lot of work on the offensive side of the ball, especially, but in general. So draft week is here. Give us what's your ideal scenario and where the team needs for.
So it's hard because, if I'm looking at it, the biggest need, in my opinion, is offensive line, because you either are going to come out with a rookie quarterback starting, or you're going to have a second-year quarterback in Aiden O'Connell, which, in my opinion, there's the Raider fan base. I love the Raider fan base, but the Raider fan base is crazy, right? I mean, just the amount of opinions and they stick to it like that. Their opinion is gold. And so, I look at Aiden O'Connell as this is his rookie season. He got thrown into such a bad situation last year. We had Bo Hardigree as our interim offensive coordinator that never called plays. You have a rookie head coach, interim head coach, and our quarterback's coach was let go. Our true offensive coordinator with obviously with Josh McDaniels, he's gone, and you're throwing in Aiden O'Connell that was never prepped to play last year, and so. I look at this as his rookie season. I do have some concerns, but at the same time, I'm going to let it play out. I'm going to let him battle. I'm going to let him work. I'm going to let him do his thing before I place judgment. And then you got Gardner Minshew, which I think Gardner Minshew could be a good stopgap quarterback. It's so hard to know what he's going to bring to the table because he's been through so many teams, so many systems. He's never been able to kind of marinate a system, be able to really understand it, get a couple years into a system. And that's the biggest thing for a quarterback is learning terminology,
But that's
understanding
perfect
the
for
timing.
Gardner, man. Like that's what he has been in
That's
the
where he
league.
thrives.
Like you can throw him in anything, and like so, that is where he's at, and that's kind of what his role in the NFL has been.
Exactly. And so, my biggest thing is either it's a rookie, either it's Aiden O'Connell, or it's Gardner Minshew. But at the end of the day, you don't have a big price tag at the quarterback position, and so you need to protect that quarterback.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer you build in the trenches. I'm a firm believer that if you want to establish some success on the offensive side, you have to have a solid offensive line, because you do two things at once, right? You protect the quarterback, and you also can establish running lanes for your running back. And we all know, especially playing fantasy, running backs get hurt day in and day out. And so you can't really. I'm not a big fan of paying running backs the big money because they get hurt so often. And I like the route that the Raiders are going. They're going running back by committee. That's what they're showing us so far. And so, again, you're not going to pay a big running back. You're not going to pay a big quarterback. So you might as well invest in that offensive line. And if I was sitting there with the Raiders, if I'm playing Tom Telesco, I'm thinking take the best right tackle available at number 13 and protect whoever's under center.
Yeah. Your name of coach is very fitting right now because you're exactly right. Like we're in a place in the NFL where you need that quarterback. Like it's so important in this game right now because of how big of a passing league it is. So while you're still in that search of like who's going to be our guy, could be Aiden O'Connell. He has a great arm. He's not the most mobile quarterback, but like we don't know what he's had success when he's had a team built around him. And at Purdue, he's kind of carried a team with his arm. So like you put that team around him, and he could be a guy that's a leader of men and could end up the quarterback. But as you mentioned, not signing Jacobs long term, like I think that's just kind of where they were at in the franchise. It's like, why are we paying a running back when we just don't? Like there's so many other places that we need to build up. So while you're searching for that quarterback, you're right. It's like, let's solidify our line. Games are won at the line. Everyone knows that, right? Like in the trenches. And it also builds on that culture that we're talking about. Like let's get Raider badass smash mouth football back. And we need some big dudes on the line to do that.
Yeah. One guy that I'm got my eye on is Talisi Fuaga at Oregon State. I think it goes far beyond just what he brings on the field. He's a mauler. He's going to smash people. He's going to bring that mentality. It's that Raider mentality. I could see Antonio Pierce just really giving into that and loving that. But I'm just picturing and being from my coaching background and knowing how much you need to get players motivated during practice. I can just imagine those one-on-one battles between Talisi Fuaga and Max Crosby. I mean, seeing those guys go at it at practice and being the example and setting the tone for practice and how you want the vibe of practice to start. And those are two guys that are going to really just up the level of intensity during practice, and games are won during the week. It's not during the game. Your preparation, your mindset during the week leading up to that game is what is going to, eventually just win you that ball game. You need to prep. You need to be prepared. And I just can imagine those two battling at practice and just setting the tone for the rest of the team. So I'm excited. I do think I'd like to see us go tackle to start the draft. No matter how we do it, I don't want us to trade up for one, but I wouldn't mind trading back a little bit and possibly still getting stockpiling some picks for Tom Telesco. But we also have other needs. We need another corner. We need wide receiver depth. We could add another running back to the running back room, but and quarterback, right? And how we go about that. I have my favorite picks at quarterback. I've been doing a ton of research with the rookies coming out, and that's my biggest thing is you got to put guys on the line to start out, and hopefully. Hopefully we don't shock the world with picking somebody that is just not even on the radar, like a Alex Leatherwood or Damon Arnett. I mean, if I go through another round or another draft of our pick comes up and the analysts are shuffling through their papers, just like, oh man, we didn't have this guy on day one, So I hope we don't have any shocks. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So I got a question here for you, Coach. Now, the Raiders, what you just said, the Raiders have a lot of holes they need to fill. What is your preference / what does the fan base prefer the team to do? Go for a quarterback or fill in the spots that are needed? And as a follow-up question, if you are saying quarterback, you prefer it, which quarterback are you eyeing? Who do you have your eye on?
So my biggest thing is quarterback is a priority. If let's call it Jaden Daniels, right? That's the number one. That's the hot name for the Raider fan base because of the ties to Antonio Pierce and Marvin Lewis, which is our assistant head coach on the staff now. If you were to drop past the Patriots, I think I would be okay with taking a shot. If you were to drop past the Patriots and now you're looking at maybe giving up your number 2, maybe a number 1 next year, but you're not giving up a whole lot because this draft is very deep. You know, it's deep in positions that we need. It's deep in the corner position. It's deep in the tackle position, the offensive tackle position. And so if he were to drop past, let's say 3, which I think is unlikely, but, you know, stranger things have happened. I could see us possibly taking a shot, and I wouldn't be mad at it, right? Because we do need a quarterback. Now, if we stuck at 13, I don't want to go quarterback at 13. I know there's a lot of Michael Penix talk, and the more and more I watch his film, I might rub people the wrong way, but I'm getting Vince Young vibes. That's just what I'm getting. I don't like what I see on film in the most important areas. Yes, he's got a great deep ball. He's got a good arm. He's got a live arm. I don't know if I would say necessarily a bust. I think he's got to get into the right system, which that goes for any quarterback. But
of course,
I don't like his throwing motion. I think he relies way too much on his arm to make the throw, and when you rely way too much on your arm to make the throw, your accuracy goes down, and you see that in some of the high-level throws that he needs to make. Those throws to the sideline, they're high. The pressure that he saw, take away the injuries, right? The injuries are there. But what I saw in that Michigan game was how does he perform under pressure? Because that's the closest thing he's going to see to an NFL-type defense. And he relied way too much to just let his arm do the work than actually being able to get his body in the right position to make that throw. And some guys can do it, right? You got Patrick Mahomes that can do it. But you're not going to find every time Patrick Mahomes in the draft. So – but I just struggle to see him being able to make those type of throws against a true NFL defense. And in addition to that, he got beat up. Take away his injuries, he looked like he got pummeled, you know, just at the end of that game. And if that's how your body's going to feel after a game against a Michigan defense, your body's going to struggle through an NFL season. And so he looked like he was just beaten up in that game, and so that's my stint on Michael Penix.
I agree with you with Penix. I've been very vocal about he's probably my most confident pick to be a bust. I think him and Bo Nix both, but Penix, his arm's great, but again, the speed is not NFL defenses, and with any kind of pressure, he's just he loses his mind, and that's just the opposite of what you want at quarterback in the NFL. Add in the age, the injuries, and you know, it's, you said the right system, but the NFL is going to always be fast, right? So you need the right system, but the game is, I just think he's a shitty version of Tua, and he's going to be a total bust.
And you know, I guess my thing is, could he be a serviceable quarterback? Could he be a mid-level quarterback in the NFL? Possibly in the right system. You know, do I see him being a top 5 quarterback? I just don't see it. That's just me. I don't see him being a top 5. You know, one guy that's actually growing on me, and you just mentioned him, is actually Bo Nix, to be dead honest with you. I've been reviewing about 6-7 films of him, every throw, every single game. And the one thing I do like about him is 45 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You know, that means he doesn't turn over the ball. And that's the one thing I like. The one knock on him is that he doesn't push the ball downfield, but if you look at the system, I don't think it was required for him to push the ball downfield too much. He does have some off throws going downfield, but I think that can be corrected if you have a good core around him, right? Every quarterback has to have a decent core, unless you're Patrick Mahomes. You have to have a decent core around you. But the way that he places his ball, one of the biggest things for quarterbacks in my mind is ball placement. You know, the amount of times, and I only say this for a quarterback for the Raiders, okay? Because you got Luke Getsy, which is our new offensive coordinator. Luke Getsy likes to run a lot of screens. He does like to run a lot of short passes, but then he'll push the ball down deep. When you're a quarterback, especially like Bo Nix, and you predicated your offense on a lot of short throws under 15 yards, but you threw for over 4,500 yards last year, that means your ball placement is amazing. Let's put it that way. Because when you hit those slant routes, you need to be able to carry that receiver's momentum through the catch, and they need to get those yards after catch. And those screen routes, you're hitting that receiver on the upfield shoulder. You're putting the receivers in good position to catch that ball and continue on their route and get those yards after catch. It's elite. His ball placement is absolutely elite. And so in out of the 3 interception, one was bounced off his receiver's helmet and it was picked off. And the other one was in the Big 12, the Pac-12 championship, where the corner actually went out of bounds and then came back in and then picked the ball off. And so he really had 45 touchdowns and one interception in my mind.
So I like Nix as like his mentality. He kind of does have that hard nose, like tough guy. He would have that. I would love to see him as a Raider if he was successful, like them having that style of a quarterback. However, like that first round price tag is just way too much for me for Nix. I think there's way too much potential to bust. Yeah. You're right. And you're kind of selling me that he's like, you need a quarterback that's going to make all the right decisions and stay composed in the NFL. Like if you have that, you're good. Look at Brock Purdy, right? 7th round talent, but he makes every right. That's what, like, I was, as a Bear fan at the time, like I'm not a very loyal Bears fan, but that's a whole nother story. Mitchell Trubisky, I was like, the only chance this guy could be good is if he just makes every correct decision, you know, like literally like Tom Brady. But that's hard to come by. So because the game's so fast and it takes reps and it takes chemistry with your players, and like, so if that's what we're betting on for Nix, I'm out as a first round talent. I think the Raiders just have way too much other stuff that they can, you know, less risk. Like if I'm the Raiders, I'm going tackle like you, less risk in the first round. If we start swinging and missing on picks, your daughters are going to be Niners fans like that. They're going to be watching games with grandma and grandpa. They're going to be, you know what I mean? Like, so
they're already pushing for it, you know, so I'm fighting. But I'm with you. No, Bo Nix, I think in the second round, I'd pull the trigger on Bo Nix in the second round if he's still there. I don't know if he gets there. I don't know if he gets past the Broncos, to be honest. I think Bo Nix in a Broncos system would actually have a good chance at thriving. My pro comparison to Bo Nix is a more athletic Drew Brees. That's just kind of my pro comparison, because
best
Drew
case
Brees
scenario for him.
Like,
go with Sean Payton. You know,
he does a great job of just managing those under 15-yard passes. You know, and I'm not a big fan of the dump off quarterback. You know, Derek Carr was the dump off king. You know, but I think Bo Nix has such an upside, and you look at when in some of the biggest situations, his composure, the way that he handled himself through adversity, coming in as a rookie, I think he has a good chance at success. So in the second round, I wouldn't mind pulling the trigger. I know a lot of people are not on him at all. They especially the talks that came out about him comparing the SEC, you know, and then going over and playing for Oregon, how the SEC was just too tough and that fan base is crazy. I get it. But, you know, these guys are all young kids. They're still young kids, and they got to learn. I know the Raider fan base will chew them up a little bit, but, you know, who knows what in context he was really trying to portray there. So
this is not what Raider fans are going to want to hear, but my perfect scenario for the Raiders at quarterback is tank and get Shedeur. Shedeur is going to be outstanding. He's just those guys. You can tell, like, in his just how he carries himself, but he would look awesome in a Raiders uniform. And then just the flashy LA, like he would be an awesome Raider. Tank for Shedeur, that's what I would want.
I agree, and that this is where it comes up another point of the situation where the Raiders are in, right? We're in a very unique situation all over again, where we have Antonio Pierce that has no track record in really coaching in the NFL. He's got 2 years as an assistant, as a linebackers coach, and he was coaching high school football 5 years ago. So I don't know what mindset he has. Do I need to win now? Do I have 3 years like a normal new head coach has? I don't know. I don't know what Mark Davis is really thinking. But I'll tell you this right now. If he loses twice to Harbaugh, that cord might be pretty short. I mean, Harbaugh was one coach that a lot of the Raider fan base wanted to bring in and be that head coach just because of his winning culture. But then on the flip side, you have Tom Telesco. You have Tom Telesco, which is a GM. He's been there before. He's done that. Is Mark Davis saying, okay, Tom, you got 3 years. You got time. And so Tom Telesco might not have that I got to win now mentality. So he might say, okay, let's look at quarterbacks next year. Let's roll with Gardner Minshew and see what happens. But AP might have a completely different strategy or thought process going into this year's draft. And so that's where it's tough. I have no clue, what we're going to do. We might trade up, we might not. It's going to be really interesting what the strategy is moving forward.
So real quick, Paul, before we move off of quarterbacks in the draft, because you mentioned offensive tackle at the first pick, and let's say they go another position in the second, I want to hear who is your 1 or 2 quarterbacks you would like to see them take when we're talking about rounds 3 and on. Do you have a couple mid-round guys that you like in this draft?
One guy that is kind of growing on me, Spencer Radler. I like what he brings to the table. It's really hard to understand what his mental mindset is. But what he proved at South Carolina is that he can get the job done. He's good at learning a new system because he jumped around from college to college, which means it's not easy to learn a new system. And so he can come in, learn a new system. Yeah, exactly.
Pro style system too.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind him. One guy that's been on my radar for a while that I think no one really is talking about, and he kind of popped out at me during the combine. I'm not a big combine guy, but some things will pop out, is Devin Leary out of Kentucky. I actually like Devin Leary. With the path that he's taken, he started out at I'm drawing a blank.
Leary?
Yeah, Devin Leary.
Was he with Tulane?
No. Same college as Phillip Rivers.
NC State.
NC State?
Yes, NC State.
Yeah, NC State. I was going to say NC State.
He threw for over 3,500 or over 3,000 yards a few years ago, 35 touchdowns, minimal interceptions, broke records over there. And then he decided to move over to, Kentucky. And he didn't have much help. Bad O-line, didn't have a lot of weapons to throw to, but he still thrived in that system. You can tell that he throws the ball extremely well. He's got good accuracy. He just didn't have much timing with his receivers, which is hard to develop in just one off season. And you're playing in the SEC, and so I think he is a 7th round quarterback that we could possibly target if we miss on quarterbacks early, maybe an undrafted free agent. Right now, they kind of have him as an undrafted free agent. I'd like to pull the trigger on Devin Leary, get another quarterback in the locker room on this roster, and let him battle. Let him battle a little bit. He's proven that he can do good things at a younger age. And when he went to Kentucky, they did well. They did well at Kentucky. He had to learn a new system and didn't have much weapons, but then a bad old line. But I like him.
So what position coach for you? Because you're talking me in I'm thinking that you're just a quarterback guru right now, and I want to know how much credibility I can put behind this. Are you
okay?
What?
So I was mainly a defensive guy growing up. I was, but the one thing the one thing that I played linebacker throughout high school. Then I had to transfer over to a safety position after, but when I coached, I was always the defensive coordinator, but then I did take about a handful of years and coach the offense because as a defensive coordinator, I knew what I didn't want to see as a defensive guy. And I understood the game enough to where I could run the offensive side. And so dabbled a handful of years in the offensive side. but I am mainly a defensive guy. That's where my heart lies. But again, I've done enough. I've watched enough film. I've dissected enough players. I've done enough evaluations of my own to kind of know what I want to see in a quarterback. Let's do this. What don't I want to see in a quarterback as a defensive guy? So that's kind of where that comes from.
I love it. So you mentioned running back room. Zamir White's probably going to lead that running back room. Can you give us a breakdown of like what you see there? What style of running back you'd like to add in the draft? Kind of talk through that.
So obviously we've got Zamir White. Unfortunately, Zamir White, we have a small sample size of what Zamir White can really do, right? He had a couple good games. You look back at the KC game on Christmas Day, he tore up KC's defense, which was great. He gave us a good enough look to say, okay, you're probably slotted at that number one spot. Then we bring in Alexander Madsen, which is really tough because you're trying to figure out what do we really have in him, right? He was supposed to be the feature back over in Minnesota. That really didn't pan out too much. And we bring him on, which just tells me, again, we're going running back by committee. I think that there's two ways we can go. One is bring in just another running back to provide competition. The one running back that I really like out of this draft class is Ray Davis. I think Ray Davis could be the best running back coming out of this draft. But then also we need probably a true goal line back. That Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, big 6'1", 200+ pound running back. He runs very smooth. He wasn't on my radar because I didn't. But watching him through the combine, one thing that I saw is he's very fluid. He runs very smooth. Almost as like how Derrick Henry's a very smooth runner. And that's kind of how Braylon Allen, I think, runs as well. But we need a true short yardage goal line guy. And so if we find ourselves picking somebody, and I don't want to target a running back until maybe the 4th round, but if we find ourselves picking somebody in the 5th or 6th, maybe Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, just a good, strong goal line back to kind of change the pace.
So Raider Bruiser, you just sold me on that one too. I like that fit. I like that fit a lot. I think like I'm not a huge Zamir White guy, to be honest. I think he did well last year in a short sample size. I just don't think there's enough like explosion there. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but that does seem like a good complementary piece to have Allen there. What are your thoughts on Zamir? Like, I think he's good for the rebuild, but it's likely that like once you have a quarterback in place, let's say Allen becomes that bruiser, and then that like explosive type back comes in drafts, next year or the following. Is that kind of what the future of that running back room looks like?
If we look at it, I'll look at it as two ways, right? One, because we're on a fantasy channel, right? I think a lot of what Zamir White's success is going to be predicated off of is the offensive line. I mean, if we bolster this offensive line, we get a guy like Talisi Fuaga. My next favorite guy is J.C. Latham out of Alabama. If we bolster this offensive line, I didn't like the fact that we didn't address the right guard situation, but there's a lot of things that we don't know that's in the Raiders locker room right now. We have Thayer Mumford that can play right guard, that can move down to, or that can play right tackle, that can move down to guard. There's some moving pieces still in the locker room that might pan out to be starters. But Zamir White's success, I do think, is, and this could be said for any running back, but if we bolster the O-line, I think he's got a chance at really being a good first, second down type of running back. He runs hard. He's fluid enough to be able to get where he wants to go. The one thing that I'm not a big fan of, and this is why I'm a huge fan of Ray Davis, is the one thing he doesn't do well, which Josh Jacobs was a master at, is he doesn't make the first man miss. That's the part that I think is crucial with running backs. You got to be able to have that ability to make the first man miss. And that's the one thing that Zamir White, I don't think, holds just yet. If there's a big running lane and he can get to the second level, he's strong enough to break some arm tackles. He's strong enough to kind of get through those hands. But in open space, if he's got a guy squaring up, in the hole or, off the edge, I haven't seen his ability to make the first man miss. And that's where you can turn a 2-yard gain into a 15-yard gain. And I just don't see that in him right now. And that's where I think Ray Davis could bring a whole other element to the table, because go back and watching his film, his ability to make that first man miss is pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, I should have added context. I shouldn't have just said I don't like him. That's what it is for me, is there's not any shiftiness into his game. It's just straight uphill running, which is great. And then you need that guy in the running back room. But that's what it is to me, as a premier back, I don't see that as his role on a team, but for now.
And one thing to keep in mind is, prior to him kind of stepping in for Josh Jacobs, people claiming him as a bust. I mean, he had 0 production prior to. Now, how much was that? Josh McDaniels. I think Josh McDaniels was just absolutely just garbage. That's a conversation for a whole nother time. But he didn't do it. Josh McDaniels didn't do anybody any favors, and so it's hard to know if Zamir White is going to really have success, and that's why I'd like for us to target a running back. I think bringing in Alexander Mattson was a really good move because it provides competition, but it's also, I think partially, Alexander Mattson still feels like he could be a number 1 running back in this league, and so he's going to fight for it. And so provide that competition, light a fire under Zamir White, and push that running back room, and bring in a rookie that could do some damage. And we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, you can't be mad at competition. So.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I want to ask a question, and then I'm gonna hang up and listen because I've got a hard stop I have to get out here. But I want you to continue. This is such a good discussion. I want Truck and Coles to continue. But Davante Adams, looking at the wide receiver position, the wide receiver room next year, he had a great year last year. He led the league with, I think it was a 33 or 34% target share. He went for over 1,100 yards again. He was second in red zone targets, but there is a lot of data out there, over the last, since like 1992, age 31 and older receivers, they have a sharp decline in production. It's like a 25% reduction in their production the following year when you're looking at their age 31, 32 season. So I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on Davante Adams this year, kind of from a fantasy perspective.
Try to keep this as short as possible.
No. Don't do that just because Shannon Mack has to run. I wanted to make sure that this has been great. So,
we can look at it 2 ways, right? On a business case, as well as because at the end of the day, the NFL is a business, and you want to progress this team as much as possible. I do think Davante Adams' value is at the highest it will be at this point. Whether you bring in, Gardner Minshew, if Gardner Minshew plays, look, he made Michael Pittman Jr. a good receiver last year. Michael Pittman Jr. went for over 1,000 yards, and so he can feed the ball to a premier receiver. I don't have any issues with that. Aiden O'Connell, I think he can too, and I think that's why when you see a big target share last year, it's because Aiden O'Connell force-fed that ball to Davante Adams. I mean, there was multiple games where you could tell Aiden O'Connell was just staring him down. It's like AP and Bo Hardigree, our interim offense coordinator, they said, you're throwing to Davante Adams 15 times this game. Like you could tell that was the game plan. And so, I think that target share is a little inflated, to be honest, but I wouldn't be opposed if we did see Davante Adams in some trade talks on draft day. You got the Jets sitting there. I don't know if they have the salary cap to bring on his contract because it's a pretty hefty contract going into this year, but the most value you're going to get out of him is this year. And the thing is that as much as Davante Adams has come out, he said, I'm a Raider. This is his childhood team. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I understand that side, but at some point, he's already a Hall of Famer. Like, he's going to go in. He's had a Hall of Fame career. At what point does a Super Bowl become priority? If the Raiders aren't making the moves to where you think we are a viable Super Bowl contender, at what point does winning a Super Bowl become the priority over your childhood team? I don't know. I could be completely wrong in him possibly thinking that. But as a Raider organization, as a as a fan, you got to really put that into perspective as to what's his motivation. He is he's over that 30-year-old threshold. And so he knows his days are numbered. He's not going to be 35, 36 playing at a high caliber level. So when do you kind of part ways knowing that he might want to find himself in a win now situation? So
he does have that contract, but like if you could tell Aaron Rodgers right now a little restructuring to his contract will bring in his biggest weapon, like he's taken that 10 out of 10 times. He knows he has 2 years left around that. Like those two, given their last push with that championship ready right now defense, that defense was incredible for New York. Adding a piece like that, adding him as a mentor for Garrett Wilson for the future, like there's so much value there. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And I'd hate to see it happen, to be done honest with you. But the reality is, and again, I look at this on the kind of analytical side, right, as the coaching side, not the just the true fan. Is at the end of the day, when it comes to Davante Adams, when's the last time a number one receiver won a team a Super Bowl? You don't have, you need the quarterback, you need that offensive line, you need that defense, you need certain aspects to find yourself in contention for a Super Bowl. And look at Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes didn't have a number one receiver. He had Rashid Rice, that who knows what his future is going to hold after what he did in Texas. But you have Patrick Mahomes. He won it without a number one receiver. You have teams that have these top tier guys. Look at what the Bills did. They shipped off Stephon Diggs. And they're going to kind of rebuild, most likely through the draft. I love Davante Adams. I love what he brings. I love everything about him being a Raider. But if you look at the coaching side, the organizational side, when's the last time a top tier receiver by himself won you a Super Bowl? It's just that's the reality.
For me, I'm thinking back on it. I would say Cooper Kupp was the last number one receiver to help win his team a Super Bowl with the Rams, right? I mean, I think he was Super Bowl MVP. Not combating what you're saying, but I was thinking about him. Like, I feel like Cooper Kupp fits that criteria.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the Patriots, like, think about their receiver rooms. It was never they had Moss at one point, but they were getting, Gronk was their playmaker there on the receiving.
They had Moss, but then you had AP in the Giants that took him out because they had a good defense, right?
Yeah,
that's the flip side.
I totally agree with you. I also think a player like Mahomes he's going to be good with anyone around him, right? So that's why it works for them specifically. I also think the wide receiver one position is such a premium right now, and for good reason. So, like those old TO games back in the day, remember when he was just like, get TO involved, broken ankle or not, and like he's going to make shit happen. Like the game is just going in that direction so much more. It's a higher scoring game. Defense in the trenches are always going to be king because that's football. It's a physical game.
Line of scrimmage.
It's definitely we're transitioning into an era where the passing game is a lot more important. These 300-yard passing quarterbacks are kind of the new thing, let's outscore you kind of thing. But you're right. I mean,
and that's the thing is, I think you need a top tier receiver. Don't get me wrong. I do think you need a top tier receiver, but does that top tier receiver need to take up 30% of your cap? Or
100%.
Especially a receiver that is now past that 30-year-old threshold. If this was a Justin Jefferson or something like that, or Jamar Chase,
totally different
situation. But we're now talking about a player that just peaked that 30-year-old threshold, and statistically, yes, they start to get on that downward trend. And so, as an organization, it's how do you handle that?
Yeah. And for me, I'd like to. It's all about where the Raiders want to go and what direction, right? I mean, if you're trading up for Jaden Daniels, if he falls and you trade up for him and you got your guy, to me, you need a guy like Davante Adams to help him make him feel comfortable and establish some confidence year one. But now if you go with a lineman and you don't move up and you're kind of just going to put scraps together for this year and hopefully get your guy next year, then to me, it's at that point, might as well ship him off and recoup enough capital to kind of start that rebuild or help establish that rebuild.
And that's to your point, right? It's what's going to make Davante Adams happy. It goes back to what's his motivation, and is he motivated to go through a rebuild? Because you bring in a rookie, you're in rebuild mode. You're not expected to get the C.J. Stroud rookie season with every single top 5 rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to understand what's Davante Adams' motivation, and if we don't, let's say we. And I don't know if I want to put that out there, but let's say we win 4 or 5 games next season, right? Is Davante Adams willing to go one more year into his career in hopes that you have a 10-win season the following year, and then in that 3rd year, maybe you got a shot? Now he's 33, 34 years old. It's like, what is his motivation today to stay a Raider? And if it's just truly, I want to stay a Raider and this is where I want to finish my career, cool, let's roll. Let's rock with you.
Yeah.
But if you want to taste that Super Bowl and you don't think the Raiders are going to get you there, right now is where you're going to get the most value out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have what I'd like to see for the Raiders. I think I want like you, stay at 13, draft a tackle, see what you have in Aiden O'Connell. Minshew is kind of your piece to just be, like you said, fluid, and his role may change. Maybe he's mentoring, and then build up for that potential. If Aiden's not the guy, we're getting a quarterback at the front of the draft next year or the following. That's to me. I just think win now is going to be really tough. Granted, that defense is ready to win now, right?
That's the one thing we got on our side. Is
it's like
defense.
The worst case scenario, that defense gets you to 8 wins. You're in such a tough division, you're going to need to be better than that. And so I'd like to see that be the future here for the Raiders, just because I like being in the playoffs. I like winning championships, right? And what's the closest way to get there? Yeah, you could say getting a little bit better each year and inching toward that, or let's look ourselves, let's take an honest look in the mirror and let's build that offensive line. Let's get that Raider culture back. And that's what it seems like they're working towards. So for me, as a new fan of you and where I want to see the Raiders go, that's where I would like to see them kind of build and work towards, And
I'm with you, because that's the closest path the Raiders have right now to finding success is through their defense, because our offense has so much work that needs to be done. And look, last year my fantasy picks, I picked Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. So I had that combo, which didn't really help for the majority of the season. But but that's a really good example. Kansas City is a really good example, is that they weren't putting up 30, 40 points a game. It wasn't that Kansas City had such a high-powered offense. It's that defense all of a sudden became good.
Yep.
That defense ended up being, a top 10 defense, and they were flying around. And so Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and that offense knew we could put up 21 points and still win this football game. And so that's kind of where I see the Raiders, if they want to win now, the easiest path is through the defense. And so that's why I do think Gardner Minshew was a very good pickup, because last year when Josh McDaniels was fired, if we just had a veteran quarterback under center, I think we would have went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But we put in a rookie that had no preparation to be there with a inexperienced play caller, behind him. I think if bringing in Gardner Minshew, if the quarterback situation in the draft doesn't work out doesn't play out the way they want it to, I think having a veteran quarterback like Gardner Minshew and pair him up with this defense, I do think you just need to score 21, 23 points and you're in the ballgame.
Yeah.
So I kind of like where we're going. Our pickup in free agency of Christian Wilkins, bolstering that D line, it's going to be scary. The adjustments that Patrick Graham, our defensive coordinator, made with Tyree Wilson midway through the year, I think is going to be a scary, scary defense coming after quarterback. So that's where I think our easiest path to success is kind of building through the defense, if that's the route we want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to touch on the offense one last time, we talked about Davante Adams. Jacoby Myers is shipped out of town, right? He's with another team.
No, he's still on the roster.
He's still on. I thought I saw him leave and go somewhere else.
He's
he just signed that deal last year.
Yeah, well, he's the number one guy that's in trade talks. Let's put it that way. Like, if there is a piece of this offense that could be traded away in the draft or whatever, his name's being thrown out there. Not that the Raiders want to do it. People are just putting his name out there as a potential, trade candidate to move up in the draft. That's why his name's out there a little bit.
Yeah, my mistake. I thought I could have sworn I saw him during all that craziness of that free agency week and a half that I thought his name got moved. But other than
we have a joke on the podcast that's Ryan's best friend. Truck, that's your best friend. You don't even know where he's at, dude.
Jacob,
so fucked.
We were just doing a random mock draft one day, and we were deep in the draft, and we have an idea since we draft together all the time. We know who we like late in the rounds. So we would end up picking a lot of the same guys when you get to those later rounds. And I just randomly was like, you know what? I'm going to take Jacoby Myers. And he just stopped. He's like, wait,
he texted me one day, after he texted me one day, I really like Jacoby Myers. The more I look at him, I think he's going to have a great year. And I just was just, joking around, called him his buddy, and then it evolved into him being my best friend. So that's kind of where that
on the podcast he's referred to as my best friend, Jacoby Myers. But I'm glad to see that he's not leaving the team as I mistakenly thought. But other than him and Davante, what up and comers do you like on the team? / do you want to try to get one of the guys later, since this is such a deep wide receiver draft?
Let's actually form the question this way, from a fantasy perspective. Give us the receiving. Give us what is the receiving production going to look like for the Raiders, and then is there going to be someone in the draft as the second part to the question? But include Michael Mayer in there, because he's obviously the guy for now at tight end from a receiving standpoint. But that would be the way that I would think of the question.
So from a receiving standpoint, this is where the one thing, when you just strictly look at the Raiders, you got to look at Luke Getsy, our new offense coordinator. I went back and I watched 7 games of his offense last year. And if we want to talk strictly about Michael Mayer to start, Luke Getsy likes to bring his offense into play. He had Cole Kmet last year. He brought in Robert Tonyan, which he coached with Green Bay when Luke Getsy was with Green Bay. And so he likes to get his tight ends involved. Now, Michael Mayer isn't part of his draft class, right? Michael Mayer was brought in last year. Luke Getsy didn't bring him in, so I don't know how much he likes Michael Mayer. I don't know how much he likes what he brings to the table. But what I do know is Luke Getsy likes to get his tight ends involved. So I could see Michael Mayer being a viable, 6th, 7th round target in fantasy next year. Just a guy that, if you're not targeting one of those top 3 tight ends, a guy that probably should be on your radar as the tight ends start to trickle off the board in fantasy. When it comes to the receivers, obviously, it depends on who's at quarterback. But one thing that Davante Adams always brings to the table is he does put up numbers, especially if you're in a PPR league. I do think that they're going to feed him the ball. So he still could be a tier 2 receiver. I don't think he's in that tier 1 conversation, especially if you're in a 10-man league. I don't know if he's at top 10 target at all. I think he's a mid, the high top tier, wide receiver 2. But if we bolster the O-line, if we get, if Gardner Minshew is under center, I think he's got a chance to still produce over 1,000 yards and in the PPR leagues, get 5 to 6 catches a game, which could definitely help you out. The one thing that is going to be kind of a question mark is Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker is our slot receiver. He's a speedster. He can get downfield. I do have some question marks on his hands. He bobbled a lot of catches last year. But he's the only receiver we have on this roster right now that could stretch the field. He's going to be the only deep target. So, and Luke Getsy doesn't necessarily go deep a lot. So I don't know how much value he's going to have. Maybe he's just your last pick of the draft if you want to just pack it, foul somebody away. But I would like to see us address the speed and slot receiver position in the draft. Guys like Taj Washington out of USC. not the fastest guy, but he's a great route runner. And one thing that I'm going to be thinking about when it comes to the fantasy next year, and hopefully none of my buddies see this, so I give away my strategy a little bit, is in the later rounds, because of the new kickoff rule, you're going to get return yards. You're going to get guys that double as a receiver and possibly a kick returner in hopes that, if kick returns go up by 40% next year, you might have a guy that's getting, an extra 2 points maybe just off of kick returns alone. And if he's a good kick returner and runs one back to the house, he can make a break that week. And so one guy that the Raiders did bring in, which is a top 30 visit, is LaDietrich Patrick from, I believe it's Mississippi State, I believe. He's a specialty kick returner, but he also played receiver. And so he ran back 2 kick returns last year. And so that's one guy that I like to see as target because he's a speedster. He's a 4.4 guy. He can stretch the field. So I'd like to see the Raiders probably starting in that 5th round, start looking at receivers, guys that can play that slot position, guys that can stretch the field. If they went a little early, I do like Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son. I do like him if they went a little early, maybe in the 3rd round, because I will say if Jacoby Myers or Davante Adams goes down, we're screwed. Our depth is horrible.
Yeah.
And if you have a rookie quarterback or an inexperienced quarterback under center, you got to have someone to throw to. And as of right now, we got 0 depth at our wideouts. So I think we definitely have to bring somebody in. But we have a lot of cap space after June 1. Jimmy G is going to be off the books, and that's going to add another $24 million to the cap space. And so you might see some players after teams start to get down to their 53-man. Some receivers might get cut. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Still a lot of money to play with for the Raiders. So we'll see. But we definitely need depth. That's for sure.
Taj Boyd, he hasn't signed anymore, right? Or Tyler Boyd, sorry.
I don't think so.
No,
so
I haven't
that's
seen
an interesting name. Trade Davante, see if you can get him on a friendly-ish type deal. That would be interesting. So, all right. So I'm hearing it as we've talked a lot about the wide receiver room, and it could look a lot differently at post-draft and, if there is a move there. But it sounds like to me, as it stands right now, in terms of production, we're still saying Davante 1, Jacoby 2, likely Michael Mayer 3, and then we'll see what the offense looks like from there.
Maybe again, Trey Tucker might be a stash.
Yeah,
depending on how Luke Getsy wants to use them, because Luke Getsy does like to run a lot of screens.
We played best ball, so he could be a best ball option where maybe has one of those 70-yard touchdowns and he ends up being a top, 5 receiver one week because he gets two breakout touchdowns, something like that. So he could be a good best ball option.
Yeah, and if you're playing a 2-flex league, he's definitely a guy that you could possibly stash away because, again, Luke Getsy likes to run his wide receiver screens. And so, Davante Adams is not a wide receiver screen type of guy anymore. Jacoby Myers isn't too much. And so Trey Tucker is really your only answer if they don't bring anybody in. So if you're in a PPR, if you are a guy that just needs a second flex player and you got one of your good guys on a bye, you might be able to slot him in depending on how Luke Getsy wants to use them. So.
Yeah, I will say be careful with the Luke Getsy screen game. You're going to be like, oh, man, this guy runs a lot of good screens. And then you're going to get to the point where you're like, all right, stop running wide receiver screens. We need something else. So
that was my issue.
That's as a bitter Bears fan. But.
That's my issue with that was my big issue with John Gruden when we had him calling plays.
Yeah.
He was so predictable with his screens, and it just drove me nuts. And then you got the offensive coordinators like Bo Hardigree last year. Again, he's interim offensive coordinator. He barely ran screens, so it's like you need to help your O-line a little bit. You need to help your quarterback a little bit to keep those D linemen guessing. So throw a screen in there every once in a while, and he just struggled to do it. So, but again, I don't fault him too much. He was thrown into that position, but you might get some screens out of Luke Getsy, and maybe Trey Tucker's his guy.
All right,
awesome.
We'll see.
Well, I'm good. So I'm not blindly loyal to any NFL teams. So one of the things I love doing about these episodes, getting to know each team from the fan base, from even better in this case. You're a coach and you really know ball, right? I love now that going into the draft, I like good football. I like good football teams. So I like teams that are making the right moves. So now I walk into the draft week with like, this is what I want to see. I have a map of almost every team, right? So I'll be cheering. I'll be cheering for what I would like to see for the Raiders to, I think we had a great job hashing that out here today on the episode. I certainly learned a lot myself. It's tackle at 13, and then late add a wide receiver option for depth, potentially take a shot at a mid-round quarterback. That's kind of what I'm looking for here heading into the draft this week.
I'll give you just a real quick rundown to kind of give you my true thoughts. Tackle at first round. Second round, I would like to target. Again, we talked about Bo Nix. It just depends on mindset, what they want to do, but I would like to target a corner. We definitely need another corner opposite of Jack Jones. So Enos Rickshaw is on my radar at the second round, TJ Tampa. But again, this corner position is extremely deep. My two sleeper corners is Dwight McGlothern out of Arkansas. I think he's a 6'2", lengthy corner. Kamal Hayden. Kamal Hayden is one guy that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. He got hurt last year, but it was a pec injury, so it wasn't a knee, it wasn't an ankle, and so it's not going to really affect his mobility at all. Kamal Hayden, he was locking receivers down in the SEC, and he's dropping to possibly the 6th round, maybe 7th. So Kamal Hayden, I think, is a sleeper, but definitely O-line, got to address the quarterback situation, and the cornerback situation is definitely something we got to address in the top three rounds. So that's kind of what I'd like to see. One guy that was on my radar was Braden Fisk on the D-line, but we picked up Christian Wilkins. But Braden Fisk, I think, is going to be a monster.
Gosh, I forgot you guys got Wilkins. That just adds to that badass defensive line. I totally forgot about that. Talk about establishing that culture and building on that for the next season. Adding that piece is absolutely huge. I love that.
It's going to be scary.
I'm excited for Raiders, man. I think our fan base, and I'm excited to get to know your listeners a little bit more too, but I think they'll really take a lot away from this conversation today. So I appreciate, you coming on. You made a fan of me. I really love your story and what you're building over there for the Raiders. I really do. I'm not typically the guy that brown noses too much, but like when I truly believe something, I do come across and say it. So I really am rooting for you. It's outstanding. And do everything in my part to kind of, drive exposure to your page, anything that I can do. So I really appreciate it. Briefly, so something that I'm going to work on, I'm going to work towards for you. I live in Austin, Texas. I'm working out at a gym down here. See a guy with a Valpo football shirt on. Him and I are in the sauna, and we just start talking ball a little bit. He's got a mustache, and it turns out he's Aiden O'Connell's brother. So one thing I'm going to work on, I'm going to plug your page to him, and I'm going to work behind the scenes to see if I can try to make some moves and see if we can get AOC on an interview on your show. That'd be awesome. I can't promise anything. I probably shouldn't even have said that on the recording, but I am going to be behind the scenes. I'm known to, try to make something happen there, and I will. I'll do my best to do that. I really will.
No, I appreciate it. This is my first opportunity to talk to anybody online. Honestly, I've been reached out a handful of times that people want to come on the podcast and everything, but it just hasn't worked out because I am so new at this. I just started back in basically September of last year, and so my viewers, they see me talking to a camera. And I don't, get that back and forth. And I know I really want to do that because I think it'll expand just my thoughts and really what I feel about the Raiders. And there's so many things that I want to talk about that you go back and review the video and you're like, oh crap, I forgot to talk about that. And so I think this platform doing this, I think it really will help just expand my thoughts when it comes to the Raiders, and hopefully hopefully they understand. I know I'll piss off some because the Raider fan base is very, very loyal to their thoughts and what they
Every
feel.
fan base, man, is
I know.
But Raiders is very passionate, so you get the
Raiders,
very brutal, like, yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been, that's the one thing is that, because I've played for so long and coached for so long, I got very, very thick skin.
Oh, yeah.
But you get those comments. They're like, come on, I mean, I've been called some things, and it's just one of those where it's like, that's what you got out of my just the thumbnail that I put, or the one comment I made about a player being a monster, because he was. We picked up a free agent last year, Marquand McCall. He's a monster. He's 6'3", 380 pounds. He's a monster. I got a guy come on my comments and basically call me a racist.
Dude,
I'm a monster.
I love that.
Okay.
There's not many people that are like born for getting into it in the comments. I will have your back. I'm going to be searching. I'm going to be looking at your page a little bit and seeing if I need to go to war for you at all. But if you ever need me to step in and drop some truth on someone, you know where to find me.
No, I appreciate it. My wife is the one thing my wife always said. She's like, okay, you can't be sarcastic back at these people, because that's where I don't care. You can tell me I'm wrong. I had a person comment the other day about I know nothing about football. How about I go do my homework before I talk about it? And I wanted so bad to just go back with sarcasm, but
yeah, you know how that's taken over text, right?
Exactly, and because I want to do stuff, out here in the area, like you don't know who you're going to run into. I've already had people say, hey, are you going to do a meet and greet? Are you going to come out in the Vegas area? And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to. But then it always triggers me going, who am I going to meet up with?
Some weirdos out there.
Yeah. Like what's your intention?
Some weirdos out there. Yeah.
I got to make sure that I'm like in a casino with a lot of security just in case something pops up. So,
awesome, man. The other thing, so I'll be out in Vegas for Labor Day weekend for the LSU USC game. That'll be
nice.
Right before the season. I would love to come out a day or two early and maybe do a live show with you. And see if we can collaborate on some content while I'm out there.
Absolutely. One thing that I'm doing is one of my viewers hit me up just a few weeks ago, and he wanted me to do a live broadcast of the draft at the Ahern Hotel. It's just off the strip. And so I'm actually bringing on 2 other content creators for that cover the Raiders. We're meeting up. We're doing an in-person podcast, live online, but also in person with just a bunch of fans. And so we're going to cover the draft live.
For what day? So I can pop in there.
For Thursday, Friday. So Thursday, for day 1, Friday. Day 2. And we're just going to be talking Raiders, covering the draft picks. And it's going to be my first time. It's going to be my first time doing something like that.
So exciting, man. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And it's cool that it was one of my viewers that reached out to me. And he said, I love what you're doing. I really like what you're doing. And I have an opportunity. He's the GM over at the hotel. And he's like, if we can make this a success, we could have events throughout the year.
Yeah, huge for them.
So, I'm going to start doing that. We'll see how it goes and how that works out. And if you guys are ever in the Vegas area, let me know. Hit me up. If it's just to grab a drink or what have you. But if we want to do some sort of a live or collaboration, I'm always down.
Yeah, either way, I'll if you think of an idea of what we can do, but that will be like the week before the week 1, so we could probably we could come up with something cool. A lot of people will be getting towards the end of their fantasy football draft, so maybe we do a live draft together or something like that on Underdog. We'll think of something that's, and then maybe talk Raiders and fantasy outlook. We'll come up with something, but let's definitely do that collaboration, and then maybe go grab a bite to eat. One thing we always ask the fan bases, this will be the last question, is what's the restaurant or what do we, if we're in Vegas for a night, 2 nights, want to get off the strip and grab something, the food scene out there is incredible. Maybe one of the sneaky best in the United States, if you ask me, because you have people coming in from every city. All the big restaurants want to be there. So, let's not say, well, let's put it this way. Do you have a favorite restaurant in the strip? And then, the outskirts are, I guess, where the real food is. So.
So I don't have one on the strip because I'll be honest, I try to stay off the strip.
Yeah.
I don't go on. I will go on the strip when my parents come into town because they'll stay half their time with us, and then they'll go and stay on the strip because they like to gamble and get those comps and stuff. And so I'll bring my girls onto the strip so that they get used to it. So as they get older, they'll think, oh, been there, done that. It's not that big of a deal. But
Smart.
I don't have necessarily one on the strip, but one spot, if you guys are, in town, just south of the strip in a shopping center called Town Square, is Sicky's Burgers. And they're known for 50 brews and 50 beer, or 50 burgers, 50 brews. And so they have 50 beers on tap and they have 50 different burgers that you can choose from. And that's one spot that I take my family to go watch a Raider game, and it's a big shopping center. There's a ton of stuff to do. There's a ton of other really good restaurants in there. But whenever I have buddies coming to town, people that from out of town that come in, I'll say, hey, meet me at Sicky's Burgers. And it's a cool environment, old school cars hanging from the ceiling, stuff like that. Like it's cool. I think it was featured on what's the food guy?
Diners, drive-ins, and
he's a diehard Raider fan, but he featured it on his show. So that's one spot that I would definitely recommend if you're ever in the Vegas area. And it's just south of the strip, so it's not too far.
I love it. Maybe we'll do a live event from Sicky's Burgers.
I'd be game. Absolutely. It's a great environment too. Great sports environment.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited. This was awesome. I'm glad we had you on, and excited for any future collaborations that we do. But I'm all good here, Truck. You ready to sign us out?
Yeah, Coach. I just want to thank you for coming on. I think you gave us a lot of great stuff about the Raiders and where they're headed, and you got me excited for some Raiders football next year. So I'm pumped to see what you guys do. Yeah,
I appreciate you guys bringing me on. Again, it's my first time, doing something like this, and you guys made it a great experience. And I look forward to doing more things, and basically, anytime fantasy comes around, or if you guys want to talk Raiders, I'm more than happy to pop on and join you guys.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
great.
That's the kind of our vision for touching in with each fan base is you're going to be the voice of the Raiders for us. So throughout the season, as those storylines develop, we're going to be happy to have you on and talk some ball in season. So I love it. I guess my final thought, for your daughters, it's stick with the Raiders fan base. That we may be going through some growing pains right now, but what the Raiders are going to look like once they have this ship right in a city like Vegas, which is becoming an incredible sports city. There's so much excitement about what's being built there. Stick through it because it will eventually be worth it. And I have a feeling Dad's going to have a very, very famous face in that fan base, and you're going to be really proud of him for that. So that's my piece of advice there.
I appreciate that. I'm just going to take that clip and play it at night when they're sleeping, so it just gets grained in their heads. I'm like, I have dreams of the Raiders being great. Yes.
But you know what I'm saying, right? Like we got baseball
100%.
coming to town. Vegas is legit going to be a top 3
lot
sports
of
city in the United States. I think that I truly believe that, not only from like the atmosphere in the stadium, from being such a tourist destination, like you're going to have, it's always going to be a travel destination. Like when are we playing in Vegas? Because we're going to go, right? Like that'll always exist. So it's going to create this really fun atmosphere and build this sports city that's just incredible. So
you guys are already winning championships, right? You got the women's basketball back to back. You got the Golden Knights winning. So the culture is building over there for sure.
And I'll tell you, the Golden Knights are real over here. That is one thing.
I've been to a game, man. So fun.
I went to my first game last year, and this entire community, this Vegas area, they are diehard. I have neighbors that when we moved in and bought our house, my neighbors next to me, they're football fans. And we would talk football. They saw me bringing all my Raider stuff in, and they're like, "Oh, you're a Raider fan?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, that's great, but are you a Golden Knights fan?" That's what everybody says. And so I enjoy hockey. I love hockey. I don't follow it, but I definitely enjoy games. And I went to my first one last year, and it was a blast. I definitely know why they're well supported out here. So hopefully the Raiders at some point can get that fan base growing out here.
Yeah, and then hopefully you guys get your baseball team soon, the athletics or whatever.
like
if they're going to go
26.
through a new, is
Or
that
no.
2026?
Yeah, something like that maybe.
And then talks about a basketball team as well. I've heard that's upcoming soon as well.
It's going to be
if LeBron's on board,
fan.
there's a basketball team coming. Like
correct. I think it's just to your guys' point. It's going to be a huge sports community out here, and it's going to drive so much fan base this way. And so we'll see how it works out. But at the end of the day, I hope I can grow the Raider fan base here locally. So when my girls grow up, they'll be around a bunch of Raider fans and someday kind of really learn what the Raider fan base and the passion is. So
and
that's awesome.
maybe you'll build a community and a following to one day. It sounds like your middle daughter might be able to step in and take over what you've built.
Exactly right. She'll start talking about it like I do, and I'll get to sit back and enjoy it. Right. I'll just
awesome.
Do the takes.
Yeah.
So
I'm cheering for you, man. This has been awesome. I'm definitely going to get your contact information after this and be rooting for you.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. And after the draft, there's obviously so much going to go on, and so I'm more than happy to come on and talk with you guys because it's been a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed it.
Awesome.
I love it, man.
Great. All right,
Coach.
well, everybody, Coach, thanks for joining in. Thanks for watching us. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go check out over on the X machine at @the_805 Raider. You can get Paul's show on YouTube. The YouTube channel is go ahead and plug that real quick. Is that
it's Real Talk Raider Nation.
Real Talk Raider Nation over there on his channel. Go check him out. You guys are the best. Everybody, buckle up.